Oh, okay.
The amazing program.
Baruch Hashem. It's a lot of fun. Okay, my dear friends, we left off last time at the end of that first paragraph in Oz Beis in Rav Kook's Hakdama to Shabbos Haaretz, where Rav Kook has thus far described to us how the nature of the Jewish people is to be connected to Hashem, that is where life is meaningful, as a klal, and as a prat, as individuals, in as much as a person is experiencing their connection to Hashem as part of their identity, that's where life is operating optimally. That's where things are good. We ended off with the pasuk, V'atem adveikim Hashem Elokeichem Chaim kulchem hayom, that the words of Moshe Rabbeinu, that as a person is connected, or as the Jewish people as a whole is connected to Hashem Elokeichem, to Hashem our God, Chaim kulchem hayom, life, kulchem, you are all living hayom today. Now, we're going to read the next paragraph just underneath that, and then we're going to see where much of this thinking is coming from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh on that pasuk in Devarim. So Rav Kook explains as follows. He says, "Hachaim al pi erech ha'eloikiyus shebahem, einam misgalim el hayochid, ela ba'oisa midah shehu misametz liyos nish'af b'chol havayasai b'soichiyusa shel klalus ha'umah." Which means life in accordance with how godly and how connected to godliness it is. Einam miskalim el hayachid is not presented to, is not revealed, is not experienced by the individual, except for, meaning the only way that life is expressed, is experienced, is ba'isa midah, in direct correlation and correspondence to the efforts by which a Jew is striving for an identity with the entirety of the Jewish people. Meaning, the more that a person is working towards identifying with, driving oneself and striving towards an understanding of the connection between us and our people and the goal of the Jewish people in the world, that is how much we feel alive. That chiyus that a person has. And then he expresses this, liyos muzhar mizar nishmasaha elyona, to be infused with the enlightenment from the Lashon Zohar, to glow, to shine, to be infused with that glow, with that shine, that illumination of Nishmasaha Elyona, the lofty soul of the Jewish people, Hachaya v'kayemes, that is alive and enduring, Behakaras hayakar ha'eloki shel hachaim, with the beauty of the recognition of godliness within life, mitoich pnimiyusa haklalis, as comes from the inner depths of what it means to be a klal, to be a collective. Now, to parse through the poetry of this is always challenging. Rav Kook, of course, spoke his own Hebrew, which makes it difficult to chew through some of these phrases. It's kedai to point out, and I think I mentioned this to some of the chaver before, that we have accounts of Ben Yehuda knocking on Rav Kook's door to ask him, like, what was the best word to translate into Hebrew? Meaning, he had to check with Rav Kook. Rav Kook was the only person that knew Tanakh and Hebrew the way that Rav Kook knew it. He was a chad b'mina. There's a story that they tell of a Purim when Rav Kook was a yeshiva bacha in Volozhin. So they were having Purim Suda by the Netziv. The Netziv was the Rebbe of Rav Kook, and as opposed to, I don't know what people do in yeshivas on Purim today. I mean, I do know, but it's not always so. It's not always so lamdish. It's not so ruchani. They would say gramin, and they would do spiels that were connected to the lumdus of what they were learning. So Rav Kook stood up and started telling a whole lumdus, rhyming, all in Lashon Kodesh. The whole thing was in Hebrew, And it was with rhymes and with riddles and with hints to things in Tanakh. And then in the middle of the Purim Suda, everybody was sure that he had prepared this for months. And then in the middle of the Purim Suda, somebody dropped a kos and it shattered. And in the middle of Rav Kook doing this whole gramin, he switched. He was Purim Dik, as we'd say. He switched in the middle of his whole Lamdas Arichas, the whole lengthy rhyme that he was saying, into a hesped for the cup, eulogizing the cup in perfect Lashon Kodesh with all the rhymes. He was brilliant. It was it flowed. So Rav Kook's Hebrew is challenging. Where is this thinking coming from? This is coming from an Orach Chaim HaKadosh on their pasuk. If you turn over the page, you'll see here where it says Varim Daled in Parshas Va'eschanan. This comes from the new Masada of the new Ozvahadar edition of the Orach Chaim. They did a beautiful job with all the footnotes. There's a lot to see, but we're not going to take a look at all the footnotes here. Although feel free to hold on to this and take a look at it. If you see the top on the left-hand side, Chaim Kulchem Hayom. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to the Jewish people, you cleaving, connected to Hashem, you are all filled with life today. What does this mean? Chaim Kulchem Hayom nimshachas lemala ulamata. It is drawn from above and below. What does that mean? The life that a person is experiencing, that the Jewish people is experiencing, is drawn above and below. Says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Nimshachas lemala al zeh haderech Elokim Chaim. Right? Elokechem Chaim. Ki Hashem nikra Elokim Chaim. Now, what does it mean, lemala lemata? Is that the breaks within this pasuk can be made in different places. So, you could read the pasuk, Atem hadveikim ba'Hashem Elokechem Chaim, you who cleave to a living God, Kulchem Hayom, all of you today. Or, Atem hadveikim ba'Hashem Elokechem Chaim Kulchem. What's the Chaim on? Chaim is on Hashem or the Chaim is on you? So he's explaining. Al derech Elokechem Chaim, because Hashem is called Elokim Chaim. Hashem is a living God. That you are alive. So the Chaim, the word Chaim could go on Hashem, or the word Chaim can go on you, on Kulchem. He says, what this means, what this means is, that the life that you have comes from the Ribbon Shalom. The intention behind this, that without the Chaim that you get from the Ribbon Shalom, you do not have Chaim. Meaning the Chaim that we have is directly related to the Chaim that comes from Hashem, which is, says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, the intentional ambiguity within the pasuk. I mean, the pasuk can be read in both ways. Mashmaos means that both of these ways are true and simultaneously true. Which means even if a person is moving, even if a person has the capacity to be animated, turning over the page, and a person is moving and eating and drinking and consuming, even if a person has all of the external trappings of what appears to be Chaim, if it's not Chaim that comes from Hashem, it's not Chaim. Chaim is, by definition, says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, that which is derived from the Chiyus of Hashem. And then he quotes the famous Gemara in Maseches Brachos, She'arashaim b'chayehem kruim esim. That Rishayim, even as they are alive, they are called dead. They're dead. Why? Because they're not dveikim b'Hashem Elokechem. They're not connected to the Ribbon Shalom. L'tzad shemekayram mikar hamisa, because their source is from a source that is not of life, it's a source of death. They are disconnected from the source of life. There's no chiyus. It says, "V'zehu achidush shemechadish le'Moshe b'ma'amar zeh." This is what Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us. This is the chiddush. that their life comes exclusively from the root of life that is the Rebbeinu Shalom. And what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying is two chidushim. There are two things that are being shared here. Aleph, hu al zeh haderech mitzad she'atem dveikim ba'Hashem Elokechem Chaim, atem Chaim. The first is that you are only as alive as you are connected to Hashem. Beis, the second, al zeh haderech, tam shezachisim lidobik ba'Hashem Elokechem lefi she'atem Chaim. The reason that you get to connect to Hashem is because you are Chaim. Perush, what does that mean? Tzadikim she nishmartem mimatame haresha shehem bechinas hamaves uvacharta b'chaim l'shneim niskaven hakasav. You connect to Hashem in that you are living in accordance with the way that is Chaim. So the chiyus that you have, says Moshe Rabbeinu, the life that you have comes from Hashem. That's Aleph. Beis is your capacity to connect to the source of life, is that you are living in accordance with that life. Meaning, this is not a permanent state of being. It is constantly something that needs to be maintained. It requires constant update, constant maintenance. The chiyus that we are drawing from Hashem is only in as much as we are living in accordance with that chiyus. We're doing the thing that we need to do. The way that I explain this to my Talmidim every year, come Rosh Hashanah time, is effectively what we ask from the Rebbeinu Shalom when it comes time for Yemei Hadin, Yemei Haratzon. The Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, I'm handing out Chaim for the year. Would you like some? Would you like some? And we have to then make a proposal. We make a proposal to the CEO of Chaim Limited, right? I mean, it's unlimited by him, but the each branch of it is limited. And we say, no, this is my proposal. Can I have a budget? Can I have a budget? So he says, no, what are you planning on doing with the budget? So you make a proposal. That's what we do the whole of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's all standing in front of the CEO of Chaim Unlimited, saying our limited branch of this company we're putting a proposal, we'd like to have this and this budget, this is what we're going to do with it. So we recognize that the chiyus comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Rebbeinu Shalom says, okay, now what are you going to do with it? Are you going to live in accordance with that which gives you Chaim or not? If we do, good. Mazel tov, here's an extension on your contract. And if not, then Achmanas Antak is limited. But that's the goal. Says the Chaim, both of these perushim are within the pasuk. Now, we've noted a number of times that what Rav Kook is dancing between here is the general and the specific. That thinking comes from the next paragraph in the Chaim as well. Says the Chaim HaKadosh as follows, he says, V'omer kulchem, you in general, you collective, you plural, niskaven leklolos haprati uchlolos haklali. This is both referring to you, multiple individuals, and you, the collective. This is true both on the level of each and every individual and also you, the collective Jewish people. Al zeh derech klolos haprati, the collection of individuals. Shekol echad mehem haya kulei chai b'loi ever gerua. That each and every one of you is alive and healthy. Chazal tell us, Gemara in Chulin, b'pasuk umi kol hachai hava behema she chaim rashi evareh ve'in bamum. That each and every part of the animal that is called Chaim is also Chaim. Because it is possible for the collective to be alive and a part of the collective to not be alive. Right? A person could be alive and have a part of them that is not so lebedik. Right? That a part that's sick. So you can have a collective that is alive and parts of it that are not. And that which is true of the klal of a nation, you can have a nation that's alive and individuals that are not so lebedik. And you could also have an individual that's alive and parts of the individual that are disconnected from chiyas. So it says the Chaim, this mashal works like a, I suppose the best way to say this is like a fractal expansion, for those that know what I'm talking about. Right? You have like those infinitely zooming pictures, you know what I'm talking about? Fractals, Google it, it's gewaldig to see, right? This is the paradox that exists in mathematics on like coastlines, for example, right? How do you measure the length of a coastline? So that's impossible, right? Because you keep on zooming, you'll find more nooks and crannies, right? The length of a coastline is, I mean, on an atomic scale, it's impossible, right? But you can zoom all the way in. You can zoom all the way in, which is why whenever you see that this coastline of this state is longer than that coastline of that state, you have to just ask at what level they're zooming in. So that's a shaila. If you're consistent, then okay, you can talk. But if you're not consistent, then there's nothing to talk about. But that fractal of each Jew being a representative of the klal, and the klal being representative of each individual, so it gets bigger and smaller. You could have a klal that's alive with parts that are sick, and each part could be alive with their own parts that are sick. It says, the third line on the right-hand side on page Kufhei, the same thing is true at Har Sinai, and then later on, Moshe Rabbeinu says, all of you have been healed. The entirety of the Jewish people were healed. All of the mu'min were healed. Everybody that had a limp was no longer limping. Everybody that had, vision problems and hearing problems and all that, everything was healed at Har Sinai. Chaim kulchem, all of you individual are healed, and also the entirety of the collective has been reconnected to chiyas. He says, "V'chein amru shekol she'amdu al Har Sinai lo yahayu b'hem mu'min." Everybody that stood at Har Sinai was healed. 2 lines down, halamata shelo yahayu b'hem sumin. Nobody was blind. V'amdu b'chaz kasam, and everybody stood up strong and healthy. V'niskavein bein al mumei haguf, bein al mumei hanefesh. Says the Aracham HaKadosh, what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying here is talking both about the mumei haguf, the blemishes, the problems, the sicknesses within the body, bein al mumei hanefesh. Also on the mumei hanefesh. What are mumei hanefesh? So what's the nefesh? Yeah. So it's kedai to point out that certainly within the world of Rav Kook, when Rav Kook talks about sicknesses of the nefesh, he's talking about psychological issues. They are mumei hanefesh. Depression, anxiety, anger, loneliness. No, mumei hanefesh. People have psychological issues. Those exist as well within people, right? Not just physical issues. Mumei hanefesh. At Har Sinai, everybody was healed of all of their, all of their physical ailments, and all of the depression, and all of the anxiety, and all the schizophrenia, and all of that was healed, right? That was the Rebbeinu Shalom was like the greatest psychiatrist in the world, right? He prescribed the cure for all of the machlas, That's mumei haguf and mumei hanefesh. Says the Arachim HaKadosh, and Rav Kook is very deeply connected to this particular shita. He says, "Kvar ha'irosi shemum shebaguf yogid al pagam hanefesh." Whenever you have a mum in the guf, whenever you have a sickness within the body, it is connected to a mum shebanefesh. It's connected to something within the psyche, within the psychology of the person, because people are not made up of different ingredients. Like today, modern medicine is coming back to like an understanding of this. But Lamaisa, like a person hurts their pinky, you go to a pinkyologist. Yes? The pinkyologist gives you a pill. You say to him, like, isn't this going to kill my liver? He goes, ich weiß nicht, I'm not a liverologist, I'm a pinkyologist. Right? That's my malacha. That's that. So the emes, it's facetious. But the point is that everything is connected. right? It's not like one part of a person is not connected to. This is all mefurish, by the way, in the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, and the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, that the connection between guf and nefesh, between the body and the psyche, are very deeply embedded. And Baruch Hashem, modern medicine is slowly but surely coming around to this. 100 years ago, Rav Kook wrote at the beginning of Oros HaTshuva that the connection between physical and psychological ailments is something that modern medicine, he's talking 100 years ago, has not nearly begun to plumb the depths of. It's still true. It's still true. People are getting there, right? But the connections, the deep connections between guf and nefesh are things that are still going to take a long time for us to figure out. Correct. It's a positive psychology, positive thinking, and
physical ailments are sometimes related to mental ailments of the way around.
he's saying absolutely that. Now, you might experience it more on a psychological side or more on a physiological side, but they are always connected.
So you see people that seem to be possible.
You said it yourself. They seem to be. Seem to be.
And they're talking lots.
Right. Yeah, so I'm saying seem to be. All of these things are correlated. They're all connected. But let's.
So cyanide cured all the mental problems. When did it come back?
I think mothers-in-law. You wanted to know when did all the mental problems come back. So, that doesn't mean that people didn't have Yetzer Haras. Yetzer Hara, this is not for now, but the Yetzer Hara is not a mental problem. That is a programmed part of the system that is necessary. We'll get there. The capacity to sin is not indicative of a mental problem, right? That is part of the system, right? That is what it means to be a mensch, right? Yetzer Hara is not a mental condition, right? Rahman and Itzlan, it happens to be that they are people that have a Yetzer Hara and they say, Gewalt, what am I supposed to do with a Yetzer Hara? And then they take all sorts of pills to not have a Yetzer Hara. That's an avla, right? You're supposed to have a Yetzer Hara. You're supposed to deal with the Yetzer Hara. You're not supposed to lobotomize it. No. Says the Racham HaKadosh, he says, Ki ein mum she'ein dimyoni b'nefesh. There is no physical ailment that is not correlated some way in the psychology on all the levels of a human being. Says, V'asher al kein salei Hashem le'ba'al mum me'al ha'mizbech, which is why a kohen, which is a ba'al mum, a kohen which has a physical ailment, cannot serve on the mizbech. He cannot bring a korban. Why? Not because Hashem, hates people that have that have physical limitations, but because that is married on something b'nefesh. That's married on something b'nefesh. It is indicative of something in the nefesh, which is a hard sugya. Those that are interested in understanding some of the psychology of that, take a look at. I'll give you a good marimakam for this. The Mea Shilayach, the Ishbitza. Jared said it was this past Shabbos. Take a look at the Mea Shilayach at the beginning of Parshas Emor. He discusses this particular emotional challenge. He says, "Va'ayin b'divrei Azar." Take a look at the Zohar HaKadosh. Fine. He says, "Uchlalis haklali." The same thing that is true about each individual within the klal is also true of the klal as a whole. Shalai haya bahem echad she'enei hagun. Shalai yikarei chai. Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to a group of people that were Chaim kulchem. Each and every one of them was completely alive. Ela kulam tzadikim. All of them are tzadikim. All of them, Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to them, all of them were, this is just before they entered into Eretz Yisrael, every single Jew was brought into the mission statement of what it means to be a Yid. Chaim kulchem hayam. Beautiful. A little longer. They still have to get over the Yarden, and there was a lot more to talk about. Okay. This thinking of being connected to Hashem as a definition of being alive, that is deeply embedded within the identity of what it means to be a Jew. Now, going back to the flip side of the first page here, we'll see the second paragraph in Oz Beis, and we'll see if we can now get through this with this understanding. One word of Hakdama, the Rambam and the Kuzari and the Chavos Halavavos, and really all of the Kadmonim, Rav Saadia Gaon and Emunah Sadeus, all speak about the nature of the Jewish people as being unique. What that uniqueness is, everybody expresses in different ways. Famously, the Kuzari speaks about 4 levels of existence as being daimim, that which is non-moving, inanimate. Then there is tzameach, that which grows. Then chai, which is animal life. And then medaber, which is human life. And then above that, Yisrael. That Yisrael is a different level of existence. That is the definition of the uniqueness of the Jewish people. Rav Kook, along the lines of the Kadmonim, speaks about what the nature of the Jewish people is as follows. He says, Teva hanashama haklalis shel Knesset Yisrael hu eloi ki yusa. The nature of the collective soul of the Jewish people is its godliness. Loi b'chirasa garma la es yisrona eloki. This is not by choice. We don't choose that our nature is to be godly. Loi mitzad ma'aseh hapratim, and it is not as a result of individual activities. Loi b'tzid kasa v'yosher levava, and it's not as a result of our righteousness and the uprightness of our emotions. Ba'al ma'alasa, did we arrive at this lofty height? Our nature is nothing to do with us. You're born into it. This is by nature, the collective soul of the Jewish people is godliness. Where is he coming from in the statement? So this is a very famous line of the Zohar Kadosh, which is Araisa v'kud shebrichu v'Yisrael chad. That the Torah, the Ribbon Shalom, and the Jewish people are one. The collective soul of the Jewish people, the collective identity of the Jewish people is its godliness. Now, let's just understand for 1 second what that means. And of course, there's many, many, many levels to this. The Rambam writes at the beginning of the Mishnah Torah that the Ribbon Shalom is both the knower of Chachma and the Chachma itself. Hashem is both the interactive personality of knowledge and the knowledge itself. That knowledge is expressed in Torah. The Torah is the expressed knowledge of Hashem. See, but the Torah is something else. It is the expressed knowledge of Hashem, but it's also a story. Whose story? Our story. Which means if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? If the Torah is the expression of the knowledge of Hashem, and the Torah is also the story of the Jewish people, then the story of the Jewish people is the expression of the knowledge of Hashem in the world. That's what he means here. Is that the soul of the Jewish people is godliness. We are the expression of the will of Hashem in the world. That in the same way that the Torah is that expression, the Jewish people are that expression because we are the Torah is us. We say this every Shabbos by Mincha. Ata echad, v'shimcha echad, u'mi ka'amcha Yisrael, gai echad ba'aretz. We're the same achdus as Hashem. We're the same oneness, the same unity of Hashem. That's what we're talking about here. Now, that's not talking about each individual. To say that each individual is God, there's a word for that. That's called kfir, right? That's not our religion, right? We're not saying that each individual is God. That's because that's kfir. That's not true. But that the nature of the Jewish people is godliness. That's throughout everything that we have in learning and davening. That the expressed will of Hashem in the world is called Torah and is called the Jewish people. This is not as a result of our decisions. We didn't choose to be this way. This is the nature of who we are. Says Rav Kook, the third line on the last word on the left-hand side, he says, Tchunas gis'ah, our natural condition, hagufani v'aruchani, both physical and spiritual, asa la es chela ve'es uza be'elokim, made it such. That is what we are. Asher lo b'chirasa we didn't choose to accept this upon ourselves, and therefore, there is no way of opting out. It is what we are. There's no way of not being this. And this is essential to 2 points that Rav Kook is making. Point number one is that there is no such thing as a Jew no longer being a Jew. This was a machlokes in the days of the Gemara. Is it possible to sin so much that you are no longer a Jew? And we paskin? No. Yisrael shechata Yisrael. There is no sin that a Jew can do that will make you not Jewish anymore. You're still Jewish. Benkach or benkach kruim, right? No matter what, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. That's it. Rav Kook is saying this, as he is always saying, to two groups of people. He's saying this to the group of people that have abandoned Yiddishkeit. He's saying, it's not going to help you. You cannot become not Jewish. It's not going to help. But he is simultaneously saying this to all the people that are looking at non-religious Jews and saying, Oisvar, good-for-nothing scoundrels. No, they're still Jews. They're still Jews. Rav Kook is talking to both audiences. Neither of them want to listen to him, right? Always. Throughout all of Rav Kook's life, he is fighting with two groups of people. One group of people is saying, connect to the Ribbon Shalom. The other group of people is saying, those people you should want. That they should connect to the Ribbon Shalom. That is the paradigmatic position of Rav Kook. So he explains like this. He says, there's no way of opting out. He says, but there is something that we can choose. Our choices do affect a particular reality. When we are choosing correctly, so that identity, that destiny, that nature can be perfected and can be made to shine, can be brought into a world of activity in a way that is complete and that is important. Or a person could cover it up and drown it in filth. You can make it shine or you can bury it. But you can't remove it. Can't take it away. It is because that is what it is. It says, "Letamtem es alev leval yochush es ha'oisha ruchani atzafun b'toich chaya neshama." A person could bury and dull the sensations of what it means to be connected to Elokim Chaim, so much so that it's no longer tangible. Can't feel it anymore. You could dull it and dumb it down so much so that you don't feel it. But that dullness cannot continue forever. Haskula hativ'is, that natural segula, that natural specialness of what it means to be a Jew, bituchahi bikiyuma, will fight for its existence. As it is reawakening to be resurrected. This is the basic nature of all things, is to be in accordance with their nature. Which is why anything that exists, no matter how much you push it, you change it, it wants to be the way that it is. So no matter how much you take a plant and you bend it, you break it, you twist it, you could make a tree grow completely crooked. You could force a tree to grow completely crooked. But the seed of that tree will grow the original kind of tree. Because the nature of it is to, you could bend an oak tree to be not looking like an oak tree at all, but the seed will be enough an oak tree. Which is how it is, and this is what Cook explains, that Jews can abandon Yiddishkeit for 5 generations, and then all of a sudden you have an Einkel, that's a Rosh Yeshiva. That's how it happens, right? It's possible. Meaning the tchiyah of the Jewish people comes back. That is the nature of what it means to be a Yid. We keep on coming back because for as long as a Jew is alive, that continues. That continues. What we are going to Hashem discuss next time is times on an individual level that we connect to that fullest expression, On an individual level, that is called Shabbos. And on a collective level, that's called Shabbos Haaretz, Shemitah. On an individual level, we connect to that chiyus. We experience that on a Shabbos. But the nation as a whole, the klal, which is the meta neshama of the Jewish people, experiences that during Shemitah. And by that, we will, Be'ez Hashem, come to the circle and have a beautiful day and a wonderful Shabbos.